Imagine this: you are standing in the center of your own life, surrounded by everything you have ever accumulated, every object you thought would make you happy, every obligation you accepted to earn approval, every ambition you chased because the world told you it mattered. Now imagine that all of it, every single piece, begins to weigh on you. Not metaphorically. Physically. You feel the pressure on your chest, the tension in your shoulders, the fog clouding your thoughts. And in this moment, a terrifying question surfaces: what if none of this was ever truly yours? Today we will dive into ancient wisdom and modern psychology to understand why simplification is an act of courage, authenticity, and personal evolution, and how embracing this principle can help you resist a world that constantly pushes you toward chaos, pressure, comparison, and noise. Before we go deeper, take a moment. If these kinds of reflections resonate with you, if you are someone who seeks growth, understanding, and clarity, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs it. Comment below what comes to your mind when you think about simplifying your life. Your thoughts may inspire someone else. And stay until the end, because the insights we will explore today can genuinely shift the way you see your priorities, your choices, and your sense of fulfillment. Nothing here will be superficial. To understand why simplifying is so powerful, we must return to the extraordinary figure of Diogenes. He rejected the illusions of society around him. He believed most people were enslaved by invented desires, borrowed dreams, and artificial needs. And the more they tried to have everything, the more they lost themselves. In a world built around status, appearance, and material competition, Diogenes chose something far more radical. He chose freedom. Not symbolic freedom, not decorative freedom, but the deepest form of freedom. The ability to detach from anything that was not essential to the well-being of his soul. What if the heaviness you carry, the exhaustion that greets you each morning, the anxiety that follows you through every decision, the nagging sense that something fundamental is missing, is not caused by life itself, but by the layers you have placed over it? What if the chaos you experience is not inevitable but constructed? What if you have been living under the weight of desires that were never your own, expectations that were never fair, and illusions that were never real? This is not a comfortable thought. It is far easier to believe that life is inherently difficult, that stress is simply the price of ambition, that constant exhaustion is a badge of honor. But what if the opposite is true? What if the greatest trap of modern existence is not scarcity but excess, too many choices, too many voices, too many things demanding your attention, your energy, your soul? What if the path to strength, clarity, and freedom does not lie in acquiring more but in releasing what should never have been carried in the first place? Consider the life you are living right now. How much of it was chosen intentionally, and how much was accumulated unconsciously, piece by piece, year by year, until you no longer recognize yourself beneath the weight? How many of your daily actions reflect your true values, and how many are simply automatic responses to external pressure? How many of your possessions bring you genuine joy, and how many are just remnants of moments when you thought they would fill a void? How many relationships in your life nourish your spirit, and how many drain you silently, slowly, without you ever acknowledging it? These questions cut deep because they expose a paradox at the heart of human existence. We spend our lives accumulating, building, expanding, convinced that more will finally be enough. Yet the more we gather, the more burdened we become. The more we strive to impress the world, the more we lose ourselves. The more we fill our days with noise, the less we can hear the voice within that knows what truly matters. This paradox was understood centuries ago by a philosopher who refused to live according to society's illusions. Diogenes of Sinope, a man who owned almost nothing yet possessed a freedom so profound it enraged the powerful and inspired the wise, looked at the world around him and saw people enslaving themselves. Not by force, but by choice. They chained themselves to possessions they did not need, to ambitions that were not their own, to fears that had no substance. And in doing so, they lost the only thing that could never be taken from them, their sovereignty over their own existence. Diogenes understood something that most people never grasp: simplicity is not weakness. It is the ultimate form of power. To live simply is not to live less, it is to live more, but with intention, clarity, and truth. It is to strip away everything that obscures your vision until all that remains is what is real, what is essential, what is truly yours. But here is the question that will define everything that follows: why do we resist this so fiercely? Why does the idea of simplifying your life feel like a loss rather than a liberation? Why do we cling to complexity even when it suffocates us? Why do we defend the very things that imprison us? The answer to this question is not simple. It is buried beneath layers of psychology, philosophy, culture, and fear. And to uncover it, we must go deeper, into the hidden forces that shape how you think, how you choose, and how you live. Only then will the true power of simplification reveal itself. Only then will you understand why letting go is not an act of surrender but the strongest move you can ever make. Here is an important question for you: how many of the things you carry today, mentally, emotionally, or physically, truly belong to you? How many came from social pressure, fear of disappointing others, constant comparison, or the anxiety of not keeping up? How many of your desires are genuinely yours? This is where simplification becomes psychological, not merely practical. Carl Jung once said that people do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light but by making the unconscious conscious. And perhaps the greatest unconscious burden of the modern world is excess stimulation, excess information, excess commitments, excess noise. We rarely stop to ask, does this truly matter? Does this contribute to my life, or is it draining me? Am I choosing this, or am I merely reacting? The truth is that most people live their lives responding to forces they never questioned. They inherit beliefs from their families, absorb expectations from their culture, and adopt desires manufactured by a society that profits from their dissatisfaction. They mistake the voice of the world for the voice of their soul. And so they accumulate objects, obligations, identities, none of which reflect who they truly are. Even in existentialist philosophy, this tension appears clearly. Jean-Paul Sartre warned that human beings are condemned to choose, and that every choice requires giving up countless other possibilities. When we do not simplify, we end up drowning in choices we never made. We drift. We follow. Life passes, and we discover that we were spectators, not participants. Think about your own life, your schedule, your habits, your routines. What would happen if you removed just a fraction of the weight you carry? How would your mind feel? How would your heart feel? How much peace would return to you? It is astonishing how humans fight to acquire things they have no time or energy to enjoy. In psychology, one of the most studied concepts is cognitive overload. Researchers like Daniel Kahneman have shown that the mind becomes less capable of making wise decisions when constantly bombarded by stimuli. Your mental energy is not infinite. When every moment is filled with choices, screens, notifications, conversations, tasks, and constant comparison with others, your mind becomes exhausted. And an exhausted mind does not choose a meaningful life. It only tries to survive the day. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard believed that noise is one of the greatest threats to self-awareness. He warned that the more noise a society produces, the more lost its individuals become. Noise distracts, confuses, and dilutes the sense of purpose. When you quiet the external world, the internal world finally has space to speak. And what it reveals can transform everything. But here is what makes this problem so insidious: complexity feels productive. Busyness feels important. Accumulation feels like progress. Society rewards those who appear overwhelmed, who juggle countless responsibilities, who never rest. It equates exhaustion with ambition and chaos with success. And so people wear their stress like armor, convinced that suffering is proof of their worth. Yet beneath this facade lies a deeper truth: complexity is not strength. It is camouflage. It hides the emptiness that comes from living a life that was never truly chosen. It protects us from confronting the uncomfortable reality that much of what we do, much of what we chase, much of what we cling to, serves no purpose beyond distraction. The hidden problem is not that life is too difficult. The hidden problem is that we have made it unnecessarily complicated. And until we recognize this, we will continue to mistake noise for meaning, exhaustion for achievement, and accumulation for fulfillment. Now reflect on this. How often do you get a chance to hear yourself think? How often do you sit with your own mind without distraction? The truth is that many people fear silence because silence exposes truths they have been avoiding. But Diogenes embraced silence, stillness, and simplicity because he understood that the human soul cannot breathe when suffocated by excess. There is a powerful psychological phenomenon known as decision fatigue. Every decision you make, even small ones, drains your mental energy. Over time, this leads to stress, impulsiveness, and emotional instability. This is why great creators, thinkers, and leaders often choose simplicity in their lifestyles. Albert Einstein famously preferred wearing similar clothing every day, not because he lacked style, but because he refused to waste mental energy on choices that did not matter. He chose to preserve his clarity for what truly mattered. And this brings us to a crucial insight: the simpler your external world becomes, the stronger and more expansive your internal world grows. Your creativity expands. Your emotional resilience increases. Your thinking becomes deeper. You stop living as a reaction and begin living as a creator of your own path. But what happens when you ignore this truth? What are the unseen consequences of living in perpetual complexity? The answer is more devastating than most people realize. Complexity does not just drain your energy, it erodes your identity. It fragments your sense of self until you become a collection of roles, obligations, and performances rather than a coherent human being with a clear purpose. We live in an era where people measure success by how full their schedules are, how many tasks they can handle at once, and how many possessions they can accumulate. But philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer warned us that life becomes heavier not because of what you have, but because of what you think you must protect. The illusion of ownership often transforms into fear, anxiety, and the painful sense that something is always missing. And this feeling of constant lack pushes people into more complexity, not less. The irony is profound: the more we chase, the less we feel alive. The more we accumulate, the emptier we feel. And this emptiness is exactly what simplification seeks to cure. Consider the invisible costs of complexity. You lose the ability to be present because your mind is always somewhere else, planning, worrying, comparing. You lose intimacy in relationships because you have no emotional space left to truly connect. You lose touch with your deeper values because survival mode leaves no room for reflection. You lose your capacity for joy because nothing feels enough when you are perpetually chasing more. Modern psychology reveals that people who declutter their environment feel calmer, sleep better, and experience less anxiety. But the most important form of decluttering is not physical, it is emotional. Removing emotional excess, old resentments, unrealistic expectations, draining relationships, and unnecessary guilt, is one of the greatest acts of self-respect you can practice. Think about the weight you carry emotionally. Think about the people, habits, or thoughts that drain your energy instead of nourishing it. What would change in your life if you released even one of these burdens? The answer is powerful: everything would change. Because simplification is not about losing. It is about gaining back what was lost inside you. The unseen consequence of complexity is this: you become a stranger to yourself. You live your entire life without ever meeting the person you were meant to be. Diogenes used simplicity not only as a philosophy but as a form of resistance. He looked at society and asked, why do people imprison themselves with objects, expectations, and routines that add nothing to their soul? Why do they chase approval instead of truth? Why do they run behind illusions instead of wisdom? These questions remain painfully relevant today in a world obsessed with accumulation. Diogenes reminds us that the rarest and most valuable possession you can have is freedom, freedom from attachments that weaken you, freedom from desires that are not yours, freedom from the invisible chains of comparison. But how do you break free? How do you rebel against a system that has shaped your mind since birth? The answer is not comfortable. It requires something most people avoid: radical honesty with yourself. Throughout history, many philosophers echoed this idea in their own ways. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that strength comes from refining oneself, stripping away what is weak, false, or inauthentic. Henry David Thoreau went to the woods to live deliberately, proving that simplicity can awaken a deeper sense of meaning. And in the field of psychotherapy, Carl Rogers taught that authenticity, not complexity, is what brings healing. The rebellion begins with a single act, questioning everything. Which part of your life feels the most complicated today? Which area is crying out for simplification? You must ask yourself uncomfortable questions and resist the temptation to hide behind easy answers. How much of your identity was built intentionally, and how much was built automatically through expectations, traditions, pressure, or fear of rejection? How many things do you keep doing simply because you never stop to question them? And how many of these things are quietly draining your soul? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are essential. Without them, simplification becomes superficial and its power is lost. Diogenes had a habit of walking through the streets in broad daylight while holding a lantern. When asked what he was doing, he said he was searching for an honest man. This symbolic act reveals something important: clarity requires light, and light requires removing distractions. You cannot see truth when your vision is blocked by unnecessary desires, expectations, or obligations. Simplifying your life is like lighting your own lantern. It allows you to see what is real. But here is a critical insight: simplification is not passive. It is active. It requires courage. It demands that you face the truth about what is no longer serving you. It requires letting go of attachments that bring you comfort but not growth. And it requires honesty, deep, sometimes uncomfortable honesty with yourself. That is why so many avoid it. Complexity hides truth. Simplicity reveals it. In modern society, people often confuse busyness with purpose. But being busy is not the same as being meaningful. Being occupied is not the same as being fulfilled. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something deeply meaningful instead of just urgent? When was the last time your actions aligned with your values instead of your fears? When was the last time your life felt like it belonged to you? This is why simplifying your life is such a radical act. It forces you to confront your values. It pushes you to examine what actually matters. And this examination can be uncomfortable because it may reveal that much of your effort has been spent on things that do not nourish your soul. But once this clarity arrives, something powerful happens: you begin to reclaim your life, piece by piece, choice by choice. Imagine reaching a point in life where nothing external has the power to shake you. Where your peace is not borrowed from circumstances. Where your confidence is not dependent on approval. And where your identity is not shaped by noise, comparison, or fear. This is the ultimate destination of simplicity. And this is where Diogenes' most powerful lesson reveals itself, a lesson that has been misunderstood for centuries yet carries a transformative force capable of redefining your entire existence. Throughout this journey, we explored how excess weighs on the mind, how complexity steals clarity, and how noise suffocates truth. But now we arrive at the core. Simplifying your life is not merely about removing distractions. It is about returning to your natural state. A human being is not born to chase endlessly, to drown in expectations, or to suffocate under layers of illusion. Human beings are born to live with presence, purpose, and authenticity. The raw essence of simplicity is this: returning to who you were before the world told you who to be. Diogenes understood this with uncompromising clarity. He believed that the greatest form of power is self-sufficiency, not the kind that isolates you, but the kind that grounds you so deeply that nothing external can dictate your happiness. This is where his most profound insight emerges: when you simplify your life, you reclaim your sovereignty. You take back the authority over your mind, your emotions, and your choices. Modern thinkers support this idea in powerful ways. Viktor Frankl wrote that human beings can endure any external circumstance if they maintain inner freedom. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that the noblest individuals are those who have refined themselves beyond delusion, beyond dependency, beyond fear. And psychologists today confirm that a clear, intentional life leads to stronger resilience, healthier relationships, and a more stable sense of self. But what does this mean for you right now? It means that every unnecessary layer you remove brings you closer to your center. Every distraction you eliminate gives your purpose more oxygen. Every illusion you let go of strengthens your ability to stand firmly in your own truth. When you simplify your life, you stop fighting battles that are not yours. You stop collecting burdens you were never meant to carry. You stop negotiating your peace for temporary comfort, approval, or noise. Let us take this deeper. Think of the relationships in your life. Think of your work, your habits, your possessions, your routines. Now ask yourself, which of these reflect who you truly are, and which reflect who you were told to be? This question is not merely reflective, it is liberating. Because the moment you identify what is not truly yours, you gain the power to release it. And when you release it, something extraordinary happens. Life becomes lighter, clearer, and more meaningful. Your decisions become intentional. Your emotions become calmer. Your voice becomes stronger. You stop living in reaction to the world and begin living in alignment with your inner compass. This is what Diogenes meant when he said that the greatest wealth is to need very little. He was not praising poverty. He was praising freedom, freedom from chaos, freedom from illusion, freedom from the invisible chains that most people never question. But here is the final and most powerful revelation, the one promised since the beginning: simplifying your life is not about reducing your world. It is about expanding it. When you remove what is unnecessary, you give yourself permission to grow in ways that were impossible before. You create space for creativity, purpose, relationships, meaning, and inner strength. You expand spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. Your world does not shrink. It finally has room to flourish. This understanding is the heart of Diogenes' philosophy. He lived simply not because he lacked desires, but because he refused to let the wrong desires control him. He understood that the strongest move a human being can make is to master themselves. And mastery requires clarity, simplicity, and truth. The greatest thinkers throughout history recognized this truth. The Roman philosopher Seneca argued that life is long enough when you stop wasting it. The psychologist William James stated that the art of being wise is the art of knowing what to ignore. And Diogenes, in his uncompromising way, stripped life down to its essence to show that the core of human happiness is not found in possession but in freedom. Consider your own life again. What do you tolerate that no longer deserves space? What objects, habits, or relationships clutter your days and cloud your mind? And more importantly, what truth inside you is waiting to be uncovered once the noise is gone? Because here is the secret: the most valuable parts of your life appear only when you create space for them. Meaning needs space. Peace needs space. Wisdom needs space. And the world will never give you that space. You must create it yourself. As you move forward from this moment, remember the essence of everything we explored. Simplifying your life is not a retreat, but an evolution. It is the process of transforming your existence from chaotic to intentional, from heavy to light, from confused to clear. It is the path back to yourself. When you simplify, you do not become less, you become whole. You do not lose, you reclaim. You do not shrink, you expand into the fullness of who you were always meant to be. What is one thing, just one, that you can simplify today? Your physical space, your digital world, your emotional boundaries, your expectations, your routines. The answer lies within you, waiting to be acknowledged. And the moment you act on it, you take the first step toward a life that is finally, truly yours. Live simply. Think deeply. Choose intentionally. And let your life become a reflection of clarity, not complexity. Because in the end, the strongest move you can ever make is not to conquer the world, it is to free yourself from everything that keeps you from living fully, authentically, and without fear.